Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Rob Schultz. I teach AP Computer Science A at Bellbrook High School in Bellbrook, Ohio, and it is my pleasure to be here with you for the first AP Daily video for AP Computer Science A. This is Unit 1, Topic 1.1, Video 1. Why programming, why Java? We're going to kind of skip over those questions. We're not really going to talk about why programming or why Java. We're going to jump right in because we have a lot to do in a short amount of time, and we're going to write our first program, at least our first AP Daily program today, with the goal of displaying output on the screen. The specific takeaway, the specific goal that we're trying to take care of today is just making sure that we understand how to display output to the screen. Virtually every program that we write from this point forward will involve some sort of output. Okay, so we'll come back and we'll unpack all this at the end, but our primary goal today is just to make sure that we know how to call the system class methods, specifically print and printline, to generate output to the console. So we'll talk specifically about the difference between the two and how they work. Okay, so I want you to take a look at this program that I've got. Pretty much every program or every programming class that I've ever taken has started with a program called Hello World, and I wanted to kind of continue that tradition with our AP Daily programs. Okay, our Hello World program is designed to display some output to the screen. Okay, before we get into that, I wanted to make sure to point out three things because this video is intended to come early enough in the year that it's entirely possible that this could be the first Java program that you are writing. So I wanted to point out three specific things that will be included with pretty much every Java program we write. Okay. First thing is the block comments at the top. The compiler will ignore any text between this backslash asterisk and asterisk backslash. Okay, what that means is that our program would compile and run even if those comments were not there. But I think they're important to be there because it's just good programming practice, regardless of what language you're in or whether you're programming in a high school class environment, a college class environment, whether it's your career. Good programming practice is that we document our code. So for my own personal classes, the requirement for my students is that they have to include their name, the date, and the purpose at the top of their program. Any comments they throw in beyond that is perfectly fine, but this is the minimum, okay, that I expect from my personal students. Again, just because it's good programming practice and we want it to be there. The second thing I wanted to point out is this class declaration. Java is a class-based language, which means that everything that we do takes place somewhere in the context of a class or classes working together. All right, we have to declare a class when we write a program. We have the flexibility to name that class whatever we want. Now, you might be using an IDE that requires that you give it a specific name like main because it contains the main method. But I tell my students to make it something meaningful if they have the ability to name it themselves, okay? The one thing I want to point out is that the class name has to match the file name. In other words, when I go to save this file so that I can compile it, my file name is going to be hello world, capital H, capital W, because it's case sensitive, .java. And then our class is encapsulated, and it encapsulates everything that falls between the open and closed brackets. All right. The third thing I wanted to point out is this main method. Okay, and at this stage in the game, it's not really important to understand what each of those pieces parts do, but you do have to at least understand that that line has to be there. We have to have a main method within our class because everything between the open and closed curly brackets, that's where all of the action is, okay? The main method is what controls all of the action of the program. So even as our programs get more sophisticated and maybe we have multiple classes and multiple objects working together, somewhere in all of that, there has to be a specific main method that kind of controls all of that action that's going on, okay? So those are the things that will be a part of every Java program we write, okay? Those have to be there. All right, so let's talk about ours specifically. The first thing we're going to talk about is the system.out object. Java is an object-oriented programming language, which means that we can create objects that specialize in doing specific things. And in this case, system.out, the job of system.out is to display output to the console. That's what it does. That's its job. So anytime we want output to go to the console, we have to go through system.out. Okay, I can tell system.out to do two specific things. I can tell system.out to print, which means that I'm going to display whatever's in the parentheses on the screen, and then I'm going to wait at the end of the line for more stuff. The cursor will just sit there and blink at us. Okay, I can also tell system.out to print line, which is going to do virtually the same thing. It's going to display whatever's in the parentheses to the screen, But in this case, it's going to move the cursor down to the next line like one of those old-fashioned typewriters. You know, you hit the little thing on the side and it automatically rolls it and moves it to the next line, okay? So that's the difference between the two. They both display output to the screen. Print will keep the cursor at the end of the line, print line, and notice this is an L, not a 1. Sometimes that kind of trips my students up the first time we use it. Print line tells it to start the next line, you know, at the beginning of the next line. Okay, so here's what I want to do. In a second, I'm going to ask you to pause the video, and I want you to do a couple things. When we pause, I want you to open the IDE that you happen to be using, whatever it may be, and I want you to code our Hello World program. Okay, now be very, very attentive to detail. Notice that things like in the main method, everything is lowercase except for string, which is uppercase. Notice in our system.out.println, everything is lowercase except for the S in system. Notice the semicolons at the end of each line. Java is a very, very detail-oriented language when it comes to syntax. So we have to make sure that everything we're doing is syntactically correct. Otherwise, the compiler will not let it compile and we won't be able to run it. So I'd like you to, when I give you a second to pause, I'd like you to code the program. Again, pay very, very specific attention to detail. Compile it, run it, and then after you've had a chance to run it and see what it does, press play, and then we'll continue from there and we'll kind of break this apart and talk about it line by line. So go ahead and pause and then press play when you're ready to continue. Okay, welcome back. So hopefully everything compiled and ran okay. Let's kind of break this apart piece by piece and see what it really does. Okay, the very first line within our main method says that we're telling system.out, the system.out object, to print the string literal AP. And because we're using print, the cursor is going to wait for us at the end of the line. We're using print again in the second line. So we're telling the system.out object to print the string literal CS. And again, the cursor is going to wait at the end of the line. And the same thing's going to happen with line 3. System.out is going to print the string literal A, and the cursor is still going to wait for us at the end of the line because we're using print. But by the time we get to line 4, now we're telling system.out to use the print line method to display the word rocks with an exclamation point. And print line is going to move the cursor automatically to the next line for us. Okay, so now we're ready for whatever our final line of code is. In this case, we're going to tell system.out to print line the string literal hello world. And again, because we're using print line, it's going to move the cursor to the next line for us. Okay, so now we've got an understanding of what each line of code does. Congratulations, pat yourselves on the back. We have just completed our first AP Daily program. Okay, so here are the main takeaways. When we want output to go to the console, we have to call these system class methods. That's their job. And the system class methods include print and printline. So system.out.println and system.out.print and system.out.println will display information on the monitor. The difference between the two is that system.out.println moves the cursor to a new line after the information's been displayed. System.out.print, the cursor is just going to wait right there at the end of the line for us and blink, waiting for whatever comes next. Okay, well, thank you for joining me for this video. It's been my pleasure to be here with you. Please make sure you continue to watch the future videos. Video 2, we're going to look at string literals, and video 3, we're going to look at error detection and how to troubleshoot some specific things. So please make sure that you're continuing to watch. Everybody have a great day, and I'll see you next time.